So tell me then, how did you guys move from this like Baptist universe over to Orthodoxy?
Yeah, so I had a few touch points with Orthodoxy, and none of them at the time were super profound. They were not like, because I've had this experience or this brush or encounter with Orthodoxy, I'm ready to start inquiring. It was just, when I taught media technology at a high school for 3 to 4 years. One of my other teachers in the department, she and her husband were Orthodox. My wife's best friend in Louisville was Orthodox, and her husband is actually now a priest at
Oh, wow.
St. Elias in Toledo.
Cool.
Yeah, and so, we would talk about our faith and stuff. And then I took a trip to Romania about 15 years ago, working on a project that never really came to fruition, but I saw a lot of Orthodox churches. And so there's just things like that. So I started becoming increasingly open or interested in it. And then when we moved to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, that area, which is just outside Nashville, there's an Orthodox church that we drive past every day, and which is St. Elizabeth's Orthodox Church, with Father John Oliver as the priest, who was again just on before this show aired. And my wife and I, we were really we found it daunting, the prospect of church shopping in Nashville. And I liken it to like when you get on Netflix at 10 at night and you're trying to decide what to watch, and the options are so overwhelming that you just turn it off and go to bed. Yeah. So we were like, well, I guess it's now or never. Like if there's ever a time to try it, it's right there. We drive by it every day. Let's try it. So we went in this first Sunday, and our church is not especially grand. It's not exactly the Hagia Sophia or it's not Notre Dame. It's a pretty utilitarian building as far as Orthodox churches go. And we're actually hoping to get a new one in the coming years. But even in that space, when I walked in, I immediately sensed a very palpable spirit of gentleness and meekness and humility and a kind of sweetness, while at the same time, and these weren't incongruent to me, a spirit that also seemed to say, don't mess with me. I'm not to be trifled with. And if you're here to shake things up and bring your hot takes and your new ideas, this isn't the place. And so I found that sort of substantive, like that solidity, that sturdiness, really appealing immediately. I just sensed it. And so we started going there. And the last Sunday I attended before the pandemic shut everything down was Forgiveness Sunday, which was a very profound experience for me because I did not know anyone really in this parish. But I had enough sort of Christian sense up at that point to understand that when you sin, you make life somehow worse for everybody on the planet, Right. So there was something that didn't seem ridiculous to me to go around from person to person and ask for their forgiveness.
Right.
And by the time it ended, I was just a blubbering mess. And it was a really profound experience for me. And it was the first time, I think, where, well, I don't know if I would say the first time, but I think what I can safely say is it was a very profound and memorable landmark experience of putting your body into the faith. Yes. Because there's the prostrations, or there's at least the bowing at the very least, and the act of going person to person. The way Orthodoxy required you to get up and do something and put your body into it, I think was really unique to me. Mm-hmm. And I was, a lot of times I think, and I'm really grateful for my evangelical background, but I think something I gleaned from that, right or wrong, whether it was taught or not, was faith is always an inside out job. Always, like, you have to have your heart and your mind right before you can act. And this kind of showed me it was almost like an illustration of what Paul talks about with putting on Christ. Sometimes faith can work from the outside in.
Hmm.
And I think C.S. Lewis says it in the Screw Tape Letters, that what we do with our bodies affects our souls. And so that was that was a profound way of experiencing that. And then COVID happened. And so, we did remote church for a while, but then our parish, because it has an outdoor space, like a sheltered outdoor space,
Nice.
we were able to continue meeting pretty shortly after lockdowns, which I think was vital. And I think that another thing that was a solidified orthodoxy for me is, I think a lot of evangelicals, sort of reverted to YouTube church.
Hmm.
With orthodoxy, it's like we had to get up and go. Like when you believe the presence of Christ is in the Eucharist, like you got to get up and go to church. And so that was something that just kind of drew me in. And so we went from inquirers to catechumens, and then we were baptized into the church in February of 2022. So I'm still an Orthodox baby, basically, but that's our story.
Oh, that's so neat. I love that you had liturgy outside too at our, because we're in Austin, Texas, right? And it was warm enough. It was perfect. Yeah. And I was begging for outdoor liturgy, and our parish council was like, absolutely not. Just like, really? It's so perfect. But anyway, I think that's the perfect solution. That's fantastic. Well, so, okay. So then that's very cool. All right. So there you are in Murfreesboro. Now you're Orthodox. You're what, like 2 years in or so. Mm-hmm. And how about the kids? How have they adjusted? How old are your kids?
So my kids are 19, 16, 13, 10, and 8. And it goes girl, boy, girl, girl, boy.
Oh, you got a nice mix there. Not like your mom.
Yeah. And so that was an interesting experience as well, because I would say that whatever this sort of non-specific nebulous age the Bible refers to when it talks to, the Bible uses phrase of, before he or she knows the right from the wrong. Like there, when I was in evangelicalism, it was sort of called the age of accountability. Like there's this age where suddenly you're responsible for, like, we definitely experienced that in our family. Everyone below that sort of mysterious line just kind of took to it like, well, I guess this is what we're doing now. And they just went to church and they just kind of embraced it and went with the flow. The older two were much more like, what is this? What are we doing? I thought we were Protestants, I thought, and so they had to process it on their own terms. And then we had to be very patient with them regarding that. And I think what was pretty integral to them, coming on board and embracing it for themselves was the relationships they formed there. My son actually, he plays drums, and we have like a talent show every New Year's Eve. And so my son played drums at the talent show. And then a friend of ours came up and was like, hey, my sons play too. They should get together. So they started playing together. So they formed really good friendships there. And I think that kind of helped, ease them into it. And then we all got baptized on the same day.
Wow.
Which was a really remarkable experience.
Wow. That is really beautiful. And
but it was definitely 2 different tiers of how to process it, for sure.
Yeah, I think, for a little, 4 or 5-year-old kid, it's like, oh, okay, we go here now. This is nice. I like lighting candles, right? And it's just like, okay, whatever. Right. But for everybody else, it's a huge shift, right? And it's like, oh, everything you taught me, you're undermining now. Like, I don't know, teenagers are a little skeptical already. So that's a lot to throw at them.
I think there's something also that's been very interesting with the smaller kids is how much they love it, given how little it programs anything specifically for them compared to our previous tradition background. Like a lot of times, evangelicalism, again, which I'm very grateful for and have a lot of fond feelings for, a lot of times though, they'll do a lot of heavy programming for children,
Yeah.
And this is like, our liturgy is our liturgy. We're not going to change it. We're not going to put puppets in the middle of it, or whatever it is. And they still, I think they really like the reverence of it and the sort of otherworldliness of it and the candles and the incense and then again, I think for them another big draw is they get to play with their friends afterwards and
That's right. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to have a loving Christian community, right? And kids
right.
respond to it, and as adults we do too. And so, even though we are like struggling through all these theological questions, that has something to do with it as well. Just that feeling of oh, this must be Christian because I do feel this love here, and I know Christ gives that love. But yeah, I just sometimes think, maybe it's just that adults and kids just need the same programming, and we're thinking too hard in the United States, right? Like all these churches thinking like, well, the kids like this, and then when they're 10, they like that. When they're 12, it's like, no, we're all just bodies and souls moving through, and we got to just feed both of them.
Yeah, and then they do catechesis, and they'll do like events, adjacent to services. Like today, they painted crosses for, they do all that stuff that they love. It's just that the actual service is not programmed to entertain.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, well, and it's, it's the same. Well, I'm a Sunday school director, right? So after liturgy, we're doing all kinds of specific stuff, but there is something just beautiful about the reverence and the candles, and the kids love that too. They really do. And they love kissing icons when they're little, which is neat, I think. But
yes.